Hello, good morning, everybody. This is your host, Jordan Tremaine, and welcome to the Perspective Podcast, where we explore new thoughts, connect ideas, and offer perspectives that may change the way you think about a thing or two. And today, we're going to talk about how your mind is like a garden. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening. I hope so far, if you have been listening to this podcast, that it's sparked some new ideas or maybe challenged some of your preconceived notions. Not that I'm trying to make you angry or anything, but I think the more we can challenge ourselves, the more we can stretch ourselves, that's how we grow, that's how we get stronger, and that's how we really learn to have empathy and kind of understand each other and work together. So, if you have been listening, I hope there's been some benefit from this podcast. And if this is your first time, then I think this is kind of a feel-good episode. So, yeah, welcome. But today, I remember a while ago, somebody posted on Facebook, when I went back on Facebook, he said, for my friends who consider themselves positive, does positivity come naturally to you, or is it something you've cultivated / been taught as a child, etc.? If cultivated, how? And I put a response to that, and it got me thinking about it. The response was a lot about positivity, but I think that the way your mind grows, it can be in a lot of directions, and positivity is one of those possible directions, but it's not like the way it grows positively is like a spaceship, and then the way it grows negatively is like a tree trunk, and the way it grows this way is like a energy drink. Like, it grows in whatever way, I think based on the same principles, just kind of how you feed it. And so the way I look at your mind, I look at the way your mind works as a garden. Like, when you're born, the garden is like dirt. It may not even be dirt. You may have to like till the ground and like break up and pull rocks out or pull weeds out, but it's kind of like this blank slate. And excuse me. It's definitely possible that good things can on their own grow naturally inside of your garden. Like, as you're a baby, it's definitely possible people feed you healthy, nutritious meals and teach you good ideas right off the bat and keep you safe and build you into a great person. That's definitely possible. But that's not what happens for everybody. And I think that it's good to acknowledge that and say that at the end of the day, really the only person that has to live with the garden of your mind is you. So it's important that we all become gardeners to a certain extent. So like I was saying, when you start off, good things can grow naturally under the right conditions. But more often, I think much more often, there is a gardener, somebody who's taking care of the dirt, someone who is planting seeds, someone who is pulling weeds, someone who is keeping pests out, hopefully. And as time moves on, I think if you don't decide to actively garden your space, and that's all your space, not just this one little pocket, like, I have an acre garden, but I only want to deal with 10 square feet, so I'm only going to focus on that. If you only focus on those 10 square feet and you ultra specialize, then that you might be really good at that one area of your life, but then there's all this random overgrowth and pests and wild animals and stuff in the other part of the acre of your garden. I don't know how big your garden is or all that kind of stuff, but I think it's important to understand that the whole garden is your responsibility. And so as time moves on, any space that you are not actively tending is at risk for growth that you don't want or expect. Or if you planted somewhere in the past and you stop tending it, that spot is at risk for dying. So the fruit tree or the tomatoes, the beautiful tomatoes or rose bushes that you planted 5 years ago over in your this section of your mind you stopped watering them and stuff, they might become overgrown and nasty and moldy, or a home for pests that infect other parts of your garden and stuff like that. So I think it's if you're going to make an attempt to actually do gardening and actively garden your mind, it's important to understand that you have like a whole garden and try to do your best to manage the whole garden as much as you can. Sometimes that can be overwhelming because there are pests, there are animals, there's probably hungry people that are trying to steal your tomatoes and pick your flowers and stuff like that. So it could be quite overwhelming, and I think it is definitely possible to hire gardeners, like we do with our lawns and our gardens in our real houses at times. But I would say if you're trying to have an impressive garden, like a botanical garden, this is like the most rare, excellently pruned, beautiful garden there is. And I would hope that most people want a beautiful mind. Something that can think beautiful thoughts, that can solve problems, that can connect with people, that can take care of itself. Like all these things that you can cultivate within your mind. Positive, think positively, be optimistic. Um, if you want to do all those things and know that you can rely on your mind to support you in that, I think you're taking a risk by hiring other people to be your gardener. So if you have some motivational speaker that you listen to, or your parents or your cousins, and and not to say that anybody is bad or has bad intentions for you, but if you take advice from someone else and you don't validate it yourself, you don't think about it yourself, and you just accept it, or if you just follow someone else's path because it seems easier, and it's not, it's more difficult to forge your own path, so you kind of like follow a template. Um, you're not making all the decisions. You're not necessarily thinking about it, and you're basically hiring a gardener to help grow stuff in your mind, to help tend your garden. And while I hope you can trust them, and I hope they lead you to a great landscape that's amazingly beautiful, and maybe even there's a hedge maze, because those are great. Um, you can't be exactly sure what someone else is doing, and I hope you can trust them. I hope they do well for you. But if you hire a gardener, whatever they are, they could be a therapist, they could be a trainer, um, this or that. But if you don't fact check and validate and make sure that what's going on is right, you could be planting seeds that you really didn't want to plant. And some seeds are very hard to pull up once they take root. Or they might be using weird fertilizers, and it might change the pH of your soil. And now your soil is not good for other things you planted, and all those kind of things. So I think be careful when you let other gardeners into your garden. I think as kids, most people tend to let everybody into their garden, especially their parents and like the older people in their family and their teachers, like that are in their lives when they're younger. And this is a huge risk, but I mean we're kids at the time, so it's hard to even understand that there's a risk. We're just kind of, oh, they're tall, they're giants, and they take care of me, they give me food and stuff, so I'm gonna listen to them. Um, and I think we end up getting a lot of things planted in our garden that maybe aren't the best because we're vulnerable at that age, we're impressionable at that age. A lot of the things that we deal with in the future come from our past. And so as kids, we let people in and they may do stuff, and we got to deal with that as we grow up and grow older. So hopefully, the people that we let in our garden, hopefully our parents, hopefully our caretakers and our teachers, they're patient and they teach us how to garden. They teach us about soil, and they give us good seeds, and they plant good stuff, and they help take care of our plants when we don't know what we're doing, or we're not able to have enough skill, or we're overwhelmed with our garden. And hopefully we have beautiful flowers and strawberries and all those kind of things, because the people that we let help us with our garden uh, really did help us cultivate and make a beautiful space. But I think thinking of your mind this way helps, at least helps me for a couple of reasons. Um, Number one, not to be like super skeptical and untrusting of everybody, but at the end of the day, it's your mind, it's your garden. So be responsible for it. Take ownership of it and take responsibility of it. That's how I think about it, or think about my mind, where this is my mind and I'm going to build it in a way that's good. I'm not going to just trust other people to tell me, hey, this is good, so do it. I'm going to say, I'm going to take that advice if I respect you or if you made a good point, but I'm going to think about it myself and I'm going to see if that's really seed worth planting. Thank you for the seed. Thank you for giving me the seed, but I'm going to make sure it's good for my garden before I plant it in my garden and spend time taking care of it and put room in my garden for that seed where I could have planted something else. I'm going to make sure this is a seed I want to take care of. So there's that where it helps me to think about it in terms of me taking ownership, and it's my garden. Everybody has their garden. It helps me to think about it in terms of everybody has their own garden, and everybody's responsible for their own garden. And while if I get some good seeds from the tomatoes I've grown, I want to share those seeds. I personally don't think I should force other people, like sneak into other people's gardens and plant those tomato seeds and grow them while they're not looking. I was like, hey, these are tomatoes. I think they're really good. Here's some seeds in case you want to plant them. I'll give people seeds, but I'm not trying to grow other people's plants. I may grow a little sapling and hand them the sapling instead of a seed or something like that. But unless there's an extraordinary circumstance or a person asks for my help, so maybe like they took the seed and they're trying to grow their tomato and they're like, hey man, I'm having trouble growing that tomato seed that you sent me. Can you check out my garden and see if something's going on? Like if I get invited in and I give them some pointers and stuff, maybe. But I, from life experience, have learned that it really takes away from your own garden to try and focus on growing other people's gardens. Every garden has a gardener, which is that person. Let them run that garden and let you run your garden. If your garden isn't right, I don't think you should be gardening in other people's gardens. You should be working on yours. And so there's that idea. And then lastly, this idea that your mind is a garden is important in my life, because if you've ever had a garden, not only are there multiple moving parts, like the weather, are you in a greenhouse, are you inside, what do you water with, do you add fertilizer, certain plants don't play well together, certain plants need different, some need shade, some need full sun, and so sometimes you need to, change up different sections of your garden to have all your plants be happy. It's this kind of long-term game that's customized to whatever group of different plants you want to plant in your garden. And so it's individual, it's personal, it's yours. And you are the best person that knows how to take care of it, because you are the person who knows what you want, or you're the best person to know what you want. And you're the most familiar with your garden because you've had it the longest, you've been in it the most, hopefully. And then also, gardens take time and they take effort on a daily basis. You can't garden your garden once a year and expect it to be good unless you built some amazing automation system. But even still, I would say check your automation system. Gardens are good because people take care of them on a regular basis. They need care and love and attention all the time. If you want a good garden to grow, you can't water your tomatoes once a month. That doesn't work. You have to figure out what needs what and provide it on that schedule and check up on it. And even if you do figure that out, there's still other problems like pests and weather you didn't expect. And just sometimes we don't understand all the relationships between planting these cucumbers next to these grapes. Maybe the grapes take up some nutrient that changes the acidity of the soil, so now the plants next to it, now that the soil acidity is different, it's making them not grow as good. Or maybe there's a fire and the fire has changed the now there's like a little bit of acid rain, and the little bit of acid rain that you couldn't have planned for because there was a big old fire like in the mountains or something like that. It's raining on your garden, and now your garden's more acidic, so maybe you need to change the pH of your soil or something like that. There's things you don't plan for, but you still have to be responsible for because it's your mind. And not only do you have to plan long term to take care of your mind and cultivate it over time, and maybe ask for help but be responsible for it, but you also have to deal with the stuff that happens that's not your fault. And it's your garden. So even though it's not your fault that some of these things happen, even though it's not your fault that there's raccoons that come and try to like steal your food, it's your responsibility, if you want that food for yourself, to do something to stop the raccoons from getting the food. So these are kind of like the ways I think about my mind. And a lot of the stuff that's worth growing doesn't grow in a day or a week or a month. It can take a season, and it can take multiple seasons. And in my experience with real gardening, the first time I plant something, it turns out not that good unless I've had very similar experience. It takes me a couple of seasons before I'm like really making good stuff. And so being patient, allowing myself to fail, and not putting all my eggs in one basket to say like, I have to grow this thing that I have no experience in right now, and it needs to work or else it's not going to be good. Like, get advice, practice, pay attention to what you're doing, course correct as time moves on, and deal with the stuff you didn't expect. I think this is how you grow your mind. This is kind of how you grow in life, but I look at my mind as a garden like this. And then lastly, I would say, I don't know if you guys have ever had mint or certain plants. I'm bringing up mint because mint is like super hard to get out of your garden. Mint, I think you should plant in a pot. And nobody ever told me this. I had to figure this out. Where I planted some mint, and it kind of like took over the garden. I started like strangling and bullying other plants out. And I kept trying to like pull the mint out, but maybe like one little piece of the root would break, or I'd leave a leaf in there on accident or whatever. And then it like that root would grow into another mint plant. And it was like this battle to try to pull the mint out. And I eventually had to just take all the dirt out of the garden and put new dirt in, which means I had to kill the whole garden to get rid of the mint. In my case, if you're a better gardener than me, and you know something better to do, good for you. At the time, I don't know, I was like middle school, I think, and that's what I thought of, and that's what I did, and it worked, so I moved on. But certain times you plant stuff, and it can become a big hassle to try and get rid of it. It can affect the other things that are good that you've planted, and not to say that you should be careful and be perfect gardener and never make a mistake, but sometimes you didn't realize that this would have this effect. Sometimes the wind blew some seeds in, like weeds and stuff, and it's not good for your garden, but you still got to deal with it, and that stuff will happen. There's going to be stuff you don't expect. So I hope these podcasts that I'm doing, these Perspectal podcast episodes, are kind of like seeds for your mind. And as you listen to them, I feel like it's me giving you seeds. It's me giving you new ideas, new perspectives, new thoughts. And maybe you don't plant all of them. Maybe you don't plant any of them. But this is my opportunity to share with you something that I've thought of, share with you something that I think could improve your life or expand the way you think. And if you like it, plant it and see what grows. And if you don't, that's all right. But yeah, I think we should share our seeds. I think we should work on our own gardens. I think we should try to make beautiful produce and then take it to the farmer's market so that we can not only share our seeds to make each other's gardens better, but also share our food so that we can like sit down and break bread, and it'd be great. So this has been the Perspectal Podcast episode talking about your mind as a garden. I hope you guys have your trowels and your little fork tools, and you water your stuff, and you have great cultivated gardens where you can share food and have a good time. I think gardening is a little bit of a therapeutic exercise if you're doing it on a regular basis. So take care of yourselves. Hope this was a interesting 20 minutes for you, and I will see you guys next week. All right.